Where have you joined us from today? Where have you headed in from?
From Miami.
Oh, Miami.
Yes.
We appreciate that. We appreciate
Absolutely.
you. And are we going to get some visuals on the screen at the same time too? Are you in control of that?
I believe I am. There we go.
Fantastic.
Yes.
Because you are going to show us the future here, right?
That is part of the plan here, indeed.
Okay, fantastic. So, firstly, consumers and the change and the evolvement has never been faster. We're moving into a platinum era of retail, and I think there's a lot of confusion in terms of how does that happen? How is it seamless? How does online, in-store, immersive, experiential, how does it all combine? Can you just give us a little bit of a sanity check in terms of how you see consumers and what they want?
That's a great question. And before we even get into the tactics of what does a brand do or what does a retailer do, you have to almost take a step back and look at what's happening from a cultural perspective, what's happening from a human behavior point of view. And when we look at that, and even before we get to the premise of what future stores is, it really begins with understanding where the behavior is right now. And one of the things specifically is we look at the speed of culture. And what I mean by the speed of culture is look how we consume information, look how we consume content and data. And that's going to have a profound effect on commerce. That's going to have a profound effect on retail. And so you have to be willing to accept this reality because you have to cater to that behavior, essentially.
For sure. And it isn't a case of being able to pigeonhole this generation want that generation want that. You have so much in terms of, I see it on social, I'm inspired, I see this from my peer group, and I'm excited about that, so I'm going to join in. And it can change literally by the minute, let alone the hour.
That is a great point right there, especially around this notion of speed, because one of the things I'll say with that is it really is almost universal at this point in time. And a lot of the context that drove some of the ideation behind future stores, and we'll talk about what that is this notion that the behavior is almost universal. The technology is driving it so that you have at your fingertips the ability to find exactly what you want, to explore exactly what you want, to purchase when you want to purchase what you want to purchase. Now, if we flip that around and you look at retail, we were just talking about the speed of culture. Retail moves a little differently. If you think about it, it's really seasonality. And again, I want to be cognizant of the fact that there's marketing operations behind the scenes. But if you were to look at what we call the high street, it starts to look a lot the same. And when you then juxtapose that to what I just showed you with the social feed, where literally the attention span is maybe a minute, if generous, there's a disconnect. And this was really first the observation that led to future stores, but it converted into a hypothesis, which is if this is the behavior that's driving today's culture, how can we get the high street to be as dynamic and as engaging as our social media and as online? And that's really part of the question.
And the people here are very much involved in the delivery and logistics world, and they want to make sure they've got the connectivity and understanding as well. So we're going to be talking about something that's an in real life.
Absolutely,
store.
Yes.
It still allows you to visit and go into it and experience it. But in terms of connectivity, it's also an intelligent store. So I'm also like, I want you to bear in mind the audience and those delivery kind of experts we've got in the room. They're going to be thinking, okay, how do we integrate this? How can we get excited about it? So please make sure you do come on to that as well.
Absolutely. So the good news is that things aren't necessarily as bifurcated as it might seem. And the high street actually can become as dynamic as your social feed. And so what I have here is, and I'll just speak over it a little bit.
Yeah.
Is essentially Future Stores is a new retail concept, and it started as a permanent location on Oxford Street in London. And the idea was to create a place that is, by all natures, it's permanent. It's physically there, but it flexes, what we like to refer to internally as the ever-changing platform. And the notion behind that is one day it could be representing another brand, another day it could be a different experience altogether. You can have one brand that's in there for an extended period of time, constantly reinventing itself. And one of the nice things about this is that it does actually bring in some of the same methodology and mindset from an online perspective. So where it comes together in terms of retail is, in retail you still have programming. You have your seasonality and you have your form of activation. What we're doing here is we're supercharging that. And we're making the cycle a lot more nimble and a lot more catered to how people are actually experiencing things these days. And so obviously here you have a lot of content, but one of the things that we're seeing is that brands and retailers are already content making machines. Pretty much everyone is in this day and age. And so by creating this immersive experience that constantly changes, you give a reason for customers to be excited, to want to come in. And really, the brands and the retailers that are engaging are finding that it's very practical as well.
And it looks stunning. We can see the visuals right now, but we understand this is an intelligent store. So I'm trying to think about some of the problems, some of the challenges that we've faced through the questioning and the conversations here over the past 48 hours. We've heard about returns. We've heard about experience of product. We've heard about data and trying to get ahead of the curve so you don't have those excesses when it comes to stock. Tell us how this is an intelligent store and how it can work to the favor.
Great question, and I'll bring up a couple of little details. So we've actually been around for 1 year this month, and we launched initially with a 1 month long activation with Intel. And when we built out this apparatus, it was designed from a data-first perspective and from an operational point of view as well. So we're able to see, in terms of impressions, activations, we know that we have 15 million people that literally walked by over the course of that 1 month activation. We even had the data, because of the face tracking sensors embedded into the store, to actually decipher impressions from that foot traffic that we had there. And on top of which, this is not just simply an activation space, it's a commerce location as well. So think about combining multiple different, what would normally be siloed activations. So you have the equivalent of your out-of-home advertising. You have the conversion and consideration that you would normally get with an activation. You then also have the tactical sales ability that you get normally with retail. Now, each of those have their own sets of data that comes along with that. And so you're combining all of a sudden impressions, points of view, foot traffic, sales information all into one. And one of the things that we saw was, because this was, in fact, a bit of a hypothetical, will this actually deliver on a couple of different things? One is it going to deliver on the customer experience? But then equal to that, is it going to deliver on the operational needs, the ROI, and the uplift? And one of the things that we were able to see is, when we did this with Intel, they were able to see approximately about a 60% sales lift in that local UK market from the year before, same period. And so really, it's not a matter of, are we changing one kind of focus for another, but rather combining all of these different expertise, operations, the logistics of it as well, all into one, and just packaging it up a little differently.
The one thing as well I found very interesting as well is how attractive it looks. Having been in the retail environment 30 years, we can often lose a lot of time on trend chasing, particularly when we go to market. So say we have a retailer with a blue perfume and a purple perfume, and we want to test which one we're going to put George Clooney next to make sure we sell the big books for Christmas. That could be in field for research for 12 weeks, 18 weeks, more, and that's a very costly process. Whereas there is some dirty maths with this store and this intelligence, where you can see heat mapping, you can see interaction, engagement, and it's real life kind of James Bond stuff going on, right?
When you take the perspective of a brand or even a retailer, you have a conversion funnel. You have your top-of-the-line awareness generation that you're doing. you have your tactics to create traffic that leads them into the store, conversion online, in-store. Now, one of the things is, from a back end, a lot of the times these are actually, like I said previously, they're going to be siloed. And the amount of time it takes to coordinate all of these and to extrapolate insights can be sometimes months, if not longer. And when we go back to that initial observations within the market, that's not the speed of culture. Things can be very fast, and how you are nimble is really going to be how you stay relevant and how retail retains its stronghold in terms of presence within a typical consumer. And so for this particular type of experience, it really is about condensing and collapsing that funnel so that we have the ability to test something, to hit on the pulse, so that if something happened tomorrow, I can respond, and the physical space is designed so that maybe you're changing content, maybe you're flexing that way, but you're able to do that a lot quicker than you would with a traditional retail model.
So it is beyond the retail media space as well. We can see on the video that you showed us, there's everything from fast fashion, automotive. I saw carbonated drinks on there. It's the full spectrum of products that can benefit.
It is the full spectrum. And one of the things there is each brand comes in. I mean, ultimately, there's a fundamental canvas as to how it operates. It combines certain notions of retail as a media platform. So retail digitization, activation, and each one of these players that comes in can really decide for itself how long an activation could be. It could be a month long, it could be even a couple of months long. We've seen everything in terms of a one-day activation to a few days. And part of the thing that's really important as well is it's not just the isolation of what's physically happening in that one location. When you think about creating a larger push, an integrated campaign, what happens online, the buildup that occurs, and then the aftermath. We call it the bow tie, where you have this really large push in terms of the general awareness that happens leading into the event. And then coming out of the event, you have all of this content of the experience, you have the engagement, you have the sentiment of the customers that are coming off of that. And that's a really important thing. And one thing to note is we've had at this point in time dozens of different brands that have activated in our initial location, which was in London. And it's kind of ironic where actually this week is a key one for us because we've expanded. We actually are launching our location in New York and in Munich this week. Next week we have another location that's going to be activated in Seoul, Paris, and Los Angeles. And for this launch, we actually repartnered with Intel as almost an anniversary event for them to be able to kind of relive a lot of these moments and be able to integrate this larger campaign because of the expectations that were met previously.
Can you tell us what kind of learnings clients are getting out of it? Can you sort of give us some sparkle, some light in terms of what are you finding out from consumers on the future of retail, the future of delivery? What do they want? I'm guessing it's about speed, agility, etc. But please, I'd love to know what you can tell us.
It really is. It's quite amazing. So if we were to take it almost from a foundational level, right? You have some very base level metrics such as foot traffic, dwell time. You can even, and there is a level of sensitivity around the security of the information that we have and not to be overly intrusive. But you can see exactly with eye tracing what people are engaging with, how long they're looking at something. You can then follow them from one part of the store to see how they digested an experience and then how they actually went ahead to another part of the store where there's the commerce and the transactions are happening. And you can give physical light to a customer journey. And you can start to see what's actually happening there and then how that leads to it. Then you compound that with the auxiliary, well, I'll call them auxiliary metrics, which are typically the ones that a lot of people focus on, which are going to be the sales figures, it's going to be the social impressions that come along with that. And when you start to do that, you get what I like to refer to as 360 session data. So you can really see how people are responding And on top of that, the next kind of generation of what we're looking at is, can you create things in terms of the content and the experience that can actually change their behavior in real time based off of what you're saying?
And can you give us any insights whatsoever what that might look like?
So, absolutely.
Good.
So one of the things right now is underneath all of this LED signage, there's an apparatus of sensors and data there. And one of the things underpinning this, and retail media in general, and this is one of the things that the industry really had to work through, was it's a lot of content. How do you create that? And now when you start to look at the improvements that are happening with generative AI, specifically with content creation, you're able to create very unique experiences for a fraction of the cost, for a fraction of the time. Now, the reason I say that is because you have, for all intents and purposes, the typical canvas and content that's playing. But we can create in real time new content based off of people's experiences that can be auto-populated in this space. So then all of a sudden, as you're experiencing it, you're experiencing something new for the first time that hasn't actually happened for anyone else. And that's something where that can really only happen in person and in retail. And that's flipping the coin, where instead of thinking, well, how can retail catch up? The question is then becoming, how can retail deliver something that no other venue can deliver?
Interesting. So what does it look like from here? You've mentioned multi-locations. I'm imagining that allows connectivity for brands to be able to immediately launch a campaign, multi-city, all at once.
Yes. Well, I think there's a couple of different things. Really, there's a dual path of growth. And I'll say that one path is just the expansion of the actual footprint of future stores. And so as I mentioned, right now, this week and next week, we are literally in our expansion of our second wave of new store openings. And we're gonna learn a lot. We're gonna see how things differ a little bit culturally from one market to another market. But then the second one is the experience itself. And how can that evolve? And what are we seeing in terms of the behavior from customers that actually make us think, oh, we can do something a little bit differently? And again, when you compound that with what's happening in the broader technology and content creation world right now, it really is starting to start looking limitless in terms of what we can create.
And how do you feel, because I'm going to return it back to delivering everything we're doing, how do you feel this thing can start to work into the whole ecosystem of retail?
Fair question. And I think one of the first things almost starts with a mindset. And what I mean by that is, and when I return back to the hypothesis and kind of the initial observation that led to future stores in the first place, from there was an initial embracing of the technology, the ability to say, we're going to try something, it's going to be uncomfortable, there's not really a path forward here, but it's necessary. And I actually heard on one of the previous speakers that were up here, that same notion. It was from a slightly different perspective, but the willingness to try something new and to be willing to fail.
And in fairness, I'm just going to say that's been consistent throughout the 2 days. There is an absolute recognition, brilliantly, that organizations like this have to try something different, and some of it might fail.
Yes. Now, underpinning all of that is you have to have the ecosystem of data so that you understand your results. Why did something happen? Why is that behavior there? This was successful, and I can understand why, and I can replicate that. So leveraging the data, and this is one of the things that's a little bit difficult for some folks, because again, you have different types of data for different channels, for different needs, and ultimately you have to start bringing this together. And then at the end of the day, you have to really retain putting the customer at the epicenter of everything. You have to be willing to deliver that experience. And if you do that and you trust in the process, the ROI is going to be there. So fundamentally, it's a mindset. It really is. There's nothing too unique about that, even though the technology might make it seem that way.
I know that we're on the minutes now. We've really got to make sure we wrap up. So can you give us then the the positivity to end this conference on, your final fireside, our final keynote, regards what the future looks like. I'm calling it platinum. I do think it is an era of evolvement and learning. I do think it can be our finest yet. Is Future Stores going to be part of that mix? And how can you give us some positivity to go with?
I am more optimistic than ever about the role of retail. And there's multiple factors that are happening. One is everyone is natively, at this point in time, already on their phone. There's an appetite to be in person, to have that physical experience. The technology is really making it so readily available for big operations, small operations. And what we're seeing is that there is a true place for retail, for experience. And that doesn't mean experience for the sake of experience. It can absolutely still be tied to commerce. And when you start to look at the larger ecosystem and the integrations, we can do something that's truly groundbreaking. And I think we're just starting to see the beginnings of a new era of retail where things like Future Stores and others are really going to come to the forefront.
Alex, thank you so much for joining us today. That's been fantastic. Would you put hands together, please, for Alex Rangel?
Thank you.